because I do think that it's really, really important for members of Parliament to hear from hopefully their constituents, but from the public generally, about what's going on with prohibition, and particularly about this new bill that they introduced, C-26. As you pointed out, Jacob, it is a really, really bad bill. It will introduce minimum mandatory sentencing for drug crimes. And I find it very ironic because in the United States, there are actually some states who are moving away from minimum mandatory sentencing because they realize that it has been a complete failure. I mean, we're talking about millions of lives that have been destroyed because of the war on drugs in the U.S., and the minimum mandatory sentencing is very much a part of that, right? And I think the number of people in U.S. jails now is like 2.1 million people, and half or more are there because of drug crimes. So ironically, in the States, it seems like the debate is shifting, at least in some places, and yet here in Canada, we have Stephen Harper, who's moving in this direction of well, first of all, an incredible emphasis on enforcement, which is, I think, completely unrealistic and very harmful. And secondly, by introducing these minimum mandatories. So we have had a discussion about it in our caucus, the NDP caucus. We're extremely concerned about the bill. We want to fight the bill. It should not go through. We've been gathering information to show that there's real evidence that this kind of approach not only doesn't work, it's actually harmful. So we're doing a lot of work within our own caucus, and I've been involved in working with a whole number of groups where, as you may know, we're hoping to do a lobby on Parliament Hill the first week that we're back in February to again raise awareness specifically about this bill, but generally about the whole approach to the use of drugs in Canada, and the fact that prohibition is a very harmful approach, and the conservative so-called anti-drug strategy, where something like 3/4 of federal funds is spent on enforcement, very little is spent on the other sort of pillars that we call treatment, education, or harm reduction. And I mean, my own point of view is I feel like we have to be realistic and recognize that the use of drugs is part of our society, whether they're legal or illegal, and we have to focus on good information, particularly for young people, because right now the sort of the approach that we have, which is zero tolerance, right? And if you smoke marijuana, you become a cocaine addict. That kind of message that comes from DARE programs and from police programs is so unrealistic, and it's actually harmful.
Yeah, it's supported by science.
That's right. Yeah. And so, to me, the emphasis should be on understanding the realities and understanding that substances, whether it's drugs or alcohol or tobacco, they can be harmful. There's recreational use, and people need to understand what they're doing. Right? So the emphasis on education and where treatment is needed in terms of addiction issues, obviously that's very important as well. So this whole approach that this bill C-26 is taking us in, I think is, it's going to be, we're talking about, millions of dollars that will be invested in this.
Possibly billions?
Possibly billions. And I think, as we can see from the United States, it's a colossal failure, both politically, economically, and culturally. So we've got to stop this from happening in Canada. I think we've got to stop the war on drugs in Canada and see what's happened in other countries. And I would much prefer that we learn from the approach that they've taken in Europe, which I think is a lot more pragmatic, right? So that's what we'd like to see happen.
Well, that's great to hear, Libby.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And thank you for taking time out of your busy day to talk with us about this.
Okay. Well, I wish you luck in your lobby today. I've had a few phone calls from our members saying, "Hey, I've got people showing up at my office. What's going on?" Wonderful. And I've said, well, it's very important that people are providing information. And I hope what we can also do is learn, for those members of Parliament who may be supporting the bill, to find out why they're supporting it.
Exactly.
Like, what do they think this is going to do?
Exactly.
Right? Because there's so much myth, there's so much misinformation, and so to actually understand that is really important for us, because if we're going to fight against this bill, we need to understand what their arguments are, and then be able to actually give people real information, scientific information, real evidence about why this bill is actually going to be very harmful.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad you're doing this today.
Thank you, Vivian. We're glad you came to speak
Okay.
with us.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yay! Well, let's see if we can hand out some of these pamphlets on the street.
Yeah.